Dodson, and I'm attempting to do this video because I can't be there in person today. Um, so bear with me. This is not a normal or common way for me to communicate. It's much easier to see people's faces in front of me and talking and answering questions from actual people. However, I will do my best. I have a few questions, and I'm going to start with the one that, why did you make the art that you make? Well, geez, that's a difficult question to answer because in part I make art for many reasons, and I work in series. I create a body of work that is cohesive in terms of the medium and the subject matter and the style. And after that, I'll often go to a totally different type of series of work. And each of the series sort of have their own meaning and purpose behind the expression or the creation of the pieces. But for the work that is in the gallery right now, mostly there are landscapes, and let me start with talking about the landscapes. The group of 8 small gouaches that are square and grouped together in the back gallery were all done between the years 1996 and 1999. Oh, 2000, no, 1999. And I love the format of a square composition. It's, to me, I've always found squares and cubes sort of soothing and exact, and I like that because it contains, you know, a painting is not exact, and it somehow is gives me some boundary to the whole process of making a work. So for this particular group, I had decided that I was going to do 9.5-inch square paintings, and I would block those out on a larger piece of paper. At that time period, my son had just been born 2 years prior to that, and he has Down syndrome, so my life had changed radically. I didn't have as much time for painting as I had for the previous 15 years, and so I sort of fit this in amongst his therapies, taking care of a teenage daughter, running a household, and you know, trying to, I was doing advocacy work already and with families and children with disabilities, but the painting was something I never wanted to give up. And when my son was first born, I thought that I might have to. And for a while, there had been years where his caregiving was so intense that I wasn't able to paint very much at all. Okay, but back to this group of 8 paintings. They were included in a one-woman show at the Thomas Center Galleries in Gainesville, Florida. And that show was in the year 2000, I believe. So, these are the 8 that I have left in my possession. Mostly, I think they are all images of Northwest Arkansas. And although I've lived in Gainesville, Florida for most of the last 36, 37 years, I've currently moved right back to my most favorite place, Northwest Arkansas, and I'm again able to enjoy this landscape that is and has always remained very important to me. It shaped who I am. Its aesthetic was the basis for my own development and learning how to understand nature and be a part of living within the physical world around me. So many of the paintings in this particular show were of the Ozarks, and Lost Valley, for instance, which is in several of these paintings, was a place I went to first when I was 5 years old with my family. My dad found it down a almost imperceptible logging road, what remained of a logging road, and it was so magical, and I felt that we had found some lost place that contained and held the spirits of an ancestral sort of clan of Native Americans who I believed had lived and thrived in this place. It appeared to me to be a huge cavern that had at some point collapsed for the most part. And here I was around 5 or 6 years old, and we're climbing through the first little hole in the wall that has waterfall coming out, and there was red clay to the side, and my parents told me that that clay was probably used by the Indians to paint their faces. And then we went through that, and we're climbing over these huge boulders that in my mind had been part of a huge cavern that had collapsed. And of course I'm 5 years old, so these boulders seemed much larger to me then than they actually are to me now. And we went up to Eden's Fall, and which at that time I had no idea what the name was, and we climbed into the cave and, you know, went through these little narrow passageway to find our way to the back waterfall. So this was a place we visited now and then over the many years, and it remained and has remained one of my most sacred places to me personally. And I'm so thankful that it has been saved and preserved, and that so many people can also enjoy and relish its special beauty. I learned how to whitewater canoe on the Buffalo River when I was probably 8, 9, 10, and that river is priceless to all of us, but to me personally, it just is embedded in my soul. So this group of paintings, I have some Xeroxes of one of the images in the show that you can see sort of that I painted and wrote things around the image itself. And those writings are now covered by the mats. So I wrote down the ones on this page, and I wanted to share with you some of the things that it said. Let me find the one for that. Okay. That one I had titled Marks Like Kanji. And this is what I wrote. The wheel existed before we thought of it. There is no way to reinvent nature, just fresh ways of seeing it, unfolding like the layers of an onion, the petals of a lotus. Fragments, postage-size windows, the details which your heart maps out for you in a silent yet indelible mien. Shades and nuances of one color, winter grays, browns, silver, spring flecks. Windows to the forging of your soul, and iron-like, its roots remain embedded in all later thought. Glimpses and dreams, flying with the wind, merging to the branches of an oak when the storm clouds build. That particular painting, I want to talk about the fact that I use photographs from which I paint, and I take thousands and thousands of photographs. At the time I did these, of course, they were all 35 millimeter, and the images were printed on a 4x6 standard photograph. And I cut out a square out of a piece of cardboard and would tape it onto the photograph to find my composition. And with this particular one, I had gotten to the point that I made the square hole about 1 inch square, and so that's my reference to postage size. And so that's a 1 inch square of a 4x6 inch photograph. And what I was discovering is that the more you go into the landscape, and you're dealing with one small piece of it, not what your eyes can take in one view. But in that 1 inch square of a view, it becomes almost abstract. And the smaller you can go, the more abstract it becomes. And later, in the rectangular oil painting that is in the same room with those gouaches, I had started a new technique of dividing the canvas into squares, and the image from which I decided to work would be broken down into squares also, and I would focus and see only that one square that I worked on at one time. And sometimes I would have pieces of paper taping off the square I was working on, that particular square, and another one down here in the lower part of the canvas, and one over here maybe, and those were all sort of taped up and going at the same time. That painting, the oil of the Buffalo River, the bluffs at the Buffalo River, you can look at it, and if